Hello and welcome to Lit in Colour, a talk from Penguin, the UK's biggest publisher. Today we are exploring the notion, which should be self-evident, that poetry belongs to all of us. I am Zawe Ashton. I am an actor, writer and director, and it is my genuine thrill to be joined in this very important conversation about representation in literature and the arts by one of South London's most searing writers, Caleb Femi. How are you doing, Caleb?
I'm good. I'm super good. It's a great day today for this, actually.
We're live, so
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I feel very relaxed. Caleb, it's an incredible thing that you were able to be in conversation today. I think, as you know, as everyone knows, our audience is made up of young people, so sort of 14 to 18-year-olds, and the notion of poetry and the underrepresentation of people in literature is such an important place to start. And I feel like the person that you are such an inspiration to any age, but I think specifically to the young people we have at home. You have all of these forward slashes in your job description. You defy definition in so many ways. You are a profoundly gifted wordsmith. You're a beautifully honest performer. More recently, and this is how we met, you have also given your talents to the moving image. You're an extremely imaginative director. Caleb's film, short film, And They Knew Light, is still online as part of Channel 4's Random Act series, and I would really recommend watching it. I'd love to quote the film to kick us off. And there's a beautiful line that you have, which is, you know, you can be light without being fire. You can still wake them up and be heard without being an alarm. And if they don't see you, you let them hear you, because lightning and thunder are the same thing. You said that the inspiration behind that film was reclaiming the narrative after Grenfell, and you returned to South London, specifically the North Peckham estate of your childhood, to bring us Pour, which is your first collection. I can't believe it's only your first collection of poetry. How comfortable do you feel with the moniker of poet as we look today for inspiration?
Do you know what? Anyone is a poet. I think we get really techie about whether we want to call ourselves poets or not. Maybe because there's a particular idea that is associated with being a poet that people don't want to like claim because they don't feel like they fit that sort of ideology, or just the weight of it is too much. But you know, we all have that potential within us. I call myself a poet, and I'm still here. Nothing. There is no poetry police to tell me that I'm not.
Well, it is important to say that we are here on such a clear mission today. Talking of poetry police, of course, of which there should never be any. There should be no one policing what is such a free form expression. But unfortunately, we do find ourselves in a time where disappointing statistics like this exist. Only one UK GCSE English literature course features a novel or play written by a Black author. There are reports that show that it's possible for a UK pupil to leave school without reading a single book by an ethnic minority ethnic minority author.
Yeah.
How do those statistics sit with you? I know how they sit with me, which is probably why I cognitively said the word, because the underrepresentation is across every field, right? How do you feel when you hear those?
I mean, it's incredibly true. Coming from someone who went to school at secondary school in South London, I don't really remember studying any Black authors in my GCSE syllabuses. And also I was a teacher. I taught in North London, shout out Gladesmore. I taught there for 2 years, and I don't remember a Black author being in the curriculum, maybe one or two. Outside of that, I would make sure that we read Black authors, but it isn't a common practice. So yeah, it's tragic and it's disappointing, and it's all the bad words that you can find and the bad words that you're not allowed to use on here. But it's certainly true. There's no contesting that.
It's it is sad, and actually more than sad, it makes me angry when I think about those statistics, because as you say, I feel like I was so directly influenced by the literature that I grew up with, and certainly the literature then that was taught to me, because you were kind of told these are the only bastions of this language, right? You know, these are the only voices that you can sort of connect to under this banner of icons of literature. Do you know what I mean? All the great poets. And so you don't, yeah, right, the greatest. So you don't even necessarily, until you really come online in your mind, think about them not being Black or not being Asian or not being representative of the society that we live in, because you're told such a one-track story. Were there any texts that broke through for you? Like, I didn't know that I was needing until I found the alternative, do you know, until I started to branch out on my own. And I wonder if there are any texts that did that for you, where you suddenly thought, I've been sold a bit of a lie here.
It was mostly later on in first of all, shout out Marilee Blackman, actually.
100%.
Because Noughts and Crosses was definitely something that I really just playing with that concept, and the way that she sort of introduced that conversation into the world was something that I found super, super refreshing. I remember reading it was only later on, like when I was in A-level, that I was reading James Baldwin's Another Country. I was reading Chinua Achebe. Later on, I was reading Chimamanda. I'm Nigerian, innit? So I took to those stories a lot quicker than all the other brilliant stories that exist from authors around the world, from different ethnicities and cultures and all of that. And do you know what? I felt like I'd been robbed in a weird way. Like, I felt like there were so many conversations and so many endless nights. Do you know those nights where, or just any time that you were doing like an essay, or there was a conversation around that piece of text, and you spend so much of your brain power trying to access this like story that felt so alien to you, but you needed it because you got to pass your GCSEs. Do you know what I mean? And how much easier would it have been, or how much more engaging would it have been if you were able to relate on a cultural level to some of the stories. And you know what? It's not even necessarily for me, really. I thought that everyone in my classroom could benefit from the stories of, for example, Black authors. Do you know what I mean? We could all learn so much about the world, about everyone else's stories, about each other as well, in relation to each other, which was a big shame that it didn't happen. So I felt robbed of time. I felt robbed of intellectual sort of hardship, and all of that.
It's interesting, this feeling of being robbed, right? Because we were in relatively privileged positions to have access to an education, right? So that's like first and foremost. So we were there, we were in the classroom, we were being engaged with, which is certainly something that is not available to everyone, especially when we're talking about Nigeria, or if I'm talking about Uganda. You know, the lineage that we belong to is so unbelievably rich, and yet there are still people who don't have access to books at all. You know, girls who are prevented from engaging in education and so forth. So we were lucky to be there, and I will never say that I wasn't lucky to have experienced the poetry of Wordsworth, you know, or Keats or Seamus Heaney. Incredible. But what we're talking about is just wanting that balance, right? To be able to hold them as close as we can hold incredible words that relate directly to our own deep layered stories, right?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I don't see it as a it's a shame that we have to say lucky, because because when we then interrogate that word is I've always felt that it's a right to have access to complete stories, to have access to stories from around the globe. And
you're so right.
The framework of everything, of this situation that has come to be this, has just meant that there's a feeling of being lucky.
You're so right.
And then beyond that, it's I mean, I like Seamus Heaney. I love W.B. Yeats is one of my favorite poets. Reading The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot really was instrumental in me becoming me. Becoming this book, you know.
You have a T.S. Eliot quote at the start of your...
Exactly, yeah. T.S. Eliot is the first sort of person quoted here. But it's a combination. It's looking at the world, looking at humanity, not just from one lens, not just from the lens of like old dead white men, but looking at the world from a complete sort of all the echelons and all the aspects of humanity, looking at queer stories, looking at stories from different ethnicities, looking at stories by disabled people, looking at stories from all the little multifaceted existence of humanity.
Yeah.
We need to experience everyone's stories. Love
and they are stories.
Exactly.
They are so open and so human. I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, I would love to hear your response to when you think they will just be stories, when your incredible collection of work is not considered Black art, Black poetry, when you are in the incredible interviews that you give, and you're so open and generous sometimes with questions slightly narrow in their beginnings, and that, you know, there's no blame there, but I said at the beginning, you are someone who defies so many different types of definitions. And when do you think we just call them stories? When you and T.S. Eliot are the two, you know, exam paper questions, and we're just talking about incredible poets of a time?
When they decide to, because we're not the ones who, I don't call myself that, but I guess sometimes it's important for people to pigeonhole or to categorize you to other you, if anything. And it's more about when sort of they decide to do that. But more than anything, self-labeling is kind of the way to go forward. Who are you? Who are you as a person? Do you know what I mean? And how do you want to be categorized? Do you know what I mean? I say this all the time, like, are you happy with your name? I say it to lots of, especially like anyone who's in their teenage years, like, ask yourself, are you happy with your name? Do you actually like your name? Do you like how people refer to you? Interrogate that. It's not fixed. Do you know what I mean? To be referred to in a particular way is not fixed. You are the one who decides how you want to be referred to in the grand scheme of the world. it's not up to anyone else. So in one way, it's like, okay, cool. I know that the world feels like there's a need to categorize people, especially artists in general, anyone kind of who is in the public eye. But also what's more important above that is being able to self-define.
I love that. I love that. And it feels like a good moment, if I can, to quote directly from your collection.
All right, let's do it.
I picked out Coping.
Sweet.
And I read your book the first time when I first received it and was blown away. For the purposes of this talk, I ended up reading it again and selecting a poem that I would have wanted to read at the right time in my education. You know, if I think the poem I would have loved to have been hit between the eyes with when I was 15, to give me a breadth of perspective on the curriculum, certainly when it came to English literature, it's this one. And the line that I picked out, and I hope that you read it in full for us, maybe, if you're up for it, is this. Maybe an estate, tall as it is the half-buried femur of a dead god and the blue light of dawn. That line, for me, is so beautifully crafted, but it also contains everything that is raw about about London, do you know what I mean? It's like, if I'd read a beautifully crafted line like that when I was 15, 16, I think I would have picked up the pen a lot sooner than I probably did. Can you talk to me a bit about this poem? Can you talk to me a little bit about what the experience of writing Poor was for you? Your younger self.
So basically, to give everyone context, so this book here, Poor, is essentially me kind of looking back at my teenage years and all the things that I was contemplating, all the things that I was going through, me trying to understand who I was as a young boy, turning into a man, trying to figure out like the future, trying to figure out career, money, falling in love.
You're a romantic. You're a romantic, Caleb. I would say some of those poems, they're smoking.
You get me? Yeah, just and more than anything, trying to reclaim the narrative, reclaim the sort of the way that the media talks about young people growing up on council estates and how it's just full of this like statistics and full of this sensationalizing of violence and grief and all of that, when essentially there is a big lack of humanity within that. No one is asking about grief, about PTSD. No one is asking how young people are coping with the situation and what they're doing to cope in some of these unfavorable situations. So coping is kind of answers to that. I'll read it. Dark-skinned boys scare everything in the dark, though really we're just trying to scare away the dark. Round here, this is how we greet each other. What's good, my G? As if to say, are you safe, my G? Isn't this how you would call out to your friends if you too was in a dark place, standing on a ledge? Shout out to us boys who play out here. God knows how we do it. Maybe God doesn't know. Maybe an estate, tall as it is the half-buried bone of a dead god, and the blue light of dawn, his sun in morning, looking on the things we do when there is one less boy amongst us, how we pour the Holy Spirit of the bottle onto the concrete where his ashes lie, stir it into a clay, mold it into a new body, and like a kite in fading wind, watch his soul sink back down to good earth, settle into his body like he never left. Isn't this what you would do for your friends if you too was in a dark place, standing on the edge? Yes, that's coping.
Caleb, I honestly, I tear up when I hear you perform your.
Thank you.
It's so beautiful on the page, and it's so profound to hear it vibrate through you as a performer as well. And of course, that is something that sets you and so many other poets and writers apart from the poets that we learned about at school. Perhaps there is this element of performance, there is this incredible physical reclaiming of the art form and of your narrative and of the words.
Yeah.
I have a brilliant quote that I pulled up from you, which feels fitting after you reading Coping. There's a misconception that young Black boys don't feel grief. There is a singular perception that they're just in a perpetual state of anger. Talk to me about that quote. Expand a bit on what you were saying about how you feel you are received in the world and the place that you come from inside of your own writing.
I think it's easy to label young Black boys as aggressive and as angry without actually trying to understand the nuances that is going on, you know, with whatever it is that they're expressing. I think the moment that you raise your voice, immediately everyone reduces you to this angry body, to this like aggressive trope, without actually trying to listen to you. When I was a teacher, there was an incident that happened that really illuminated a lot of things. One day there was a young Black boy in year 10 who came in, and he was just not in the mood. And he came in, and one of the teachers felt like he was being aggressive and felt like he was being angry and felt like he was being intentionally disruptive. And there was no sort of questioning behind that. There was no sort of, what's up? What's going on? It's early. No one wants to be angry at 8:30 in the morning. No one wants to be like, what's going on? Have a conversation with someone. And I looked at him, and immediately I could just suss out that this young boy was hungry. That was it. I could see straight away that this person here is hungry. It's early in the morning. He doesn't look like he's eaten today. Let's start from there. Do you know what I mean? Let's look beyond what we have indoctrinized ourselves when we look at Black bodies, especially young Black boys, and just try and afford them humanity. Do you know what I mean? If you are in school and young and students are angry, or students are not in the best of moods in the morning, some self-care, some asking, what's up, what's going on? And that's rarely afforded. When I was a student in school, there's this reductiveness of if I'm loud, for example, if I'm being loud, I might be really happy and laughing with my friends and we're all loud together. But an outside sort of viewer might see us as being aggressive, or might see us as sort of starting a ruckus. And it's just that reductiveness that I think hinders a lot of, more than anything, because it's a school, hinders a lot of learning. Do you know what I mean?
Agree more. I think what you're touching on is something so important, Caleb, which is the lens through which people are seen, right? And that's part of what we're trying to change with these talks. It doesn't just change because you put a few more people of color on the, reading list for a curriculum. You're so right. It starts in the classroom. It starts with the generosity of spirit towards people who might not share the same lived experience as you.
Mm.
I dread to think how many creative children, how many yous there are in any class, how many me's there are in some classes, who are being cut from the root because for whatever reason there isn't this deeper search, there isn't this more empathetic lens towards what their experience might be.
Absolutely. Who wants to do maths on an empty stomach?
You are a poet through and through. You are so inspiring. You really, for me, are. You embody this question that we're tackling today, which is, well, it's not a question, it's an affirmation, right? Poetry belongs to all of us.
Yes, absolutely.
As you can imagine, we have a lot of questions coming in from the people at home. If you're ready for the first question.
Yeah, let's do it.
This is coming from Winton Academy. They want to know, of course they're at school. This is me just assuming everyone lives on their same.
All the way in Bournemouth as well. I know that.
They're in Bournemouth.
I think they're in Bournemouth.
Well, they want to know if you remember what inspired you to start writing poems and what was your first poem?
What inspired me to start writing poems was, do you know what? It was music. If I'm being totally honest, it was music. I grew up on an artist called The Streets, Mike Skinner. I grew up on an artist called Giggs. He used to live on the same estate as me, so I would see him every day. I used to listen to his music. I used to listen to all of those musics, and I kind of wanted to. They were telling stories about, you know, being from Birmingham or being from South London, and I wanted to tell my own story as well. I was 12, 13. And I was like, you know what? Everyone around me is telling their own stories. I want to tell my stories about being 13, about being 12, and all the hardships that at the time anyway, the hardships of being this scrawny little skinny lad who was just trying to make his way in the world, 13-year-old. Yeah. And then my first poem, if I could even call it a poem, my first proper acknowledged poem didn't come until I was in university. But before that, I used to write a lot of rap lyrics and just like, to me, that was the easiest way to write and still be cool. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, because
you can't be going around the playground saying, lads, look, I've written a poem. You can't do that. Do you know what I mean? It's got to have a bit of, for the sake of your social standing, it's got to have a bit of.
I remember when I first started writing poetry, and I, came up through the performance poetry scene, and we've talked and joked about this because it's not cool at one point. It just was not cool in the way that I've now experienced it, in the UK and in America. It's this incredibly cool scene to be part of, but when I was doing it, it wasn't. And you're so right. I used to write poems.
Yeah.
Knowing they were poems, but then I would try and set them to like a track.
Yeah.
Because actually flowetry was like a bit more of
the flowetry. Yeah.
It didn't work. Of course, the first one I recorded, I thought this is a hit single. Because you have to think like that when you're a young poet. But that's
the open mic circuit as well, like
Exactly. That's so funny. You're just like, think it's more rap, guys, than poems. Is there another question coming through? What inspires you to write your poetry today?
What inspires me to write my poetry today is people, the people around me who live very interesting lives. It's about the everydayness, the magic that exists in everydayness. I'm obsessed with that at the moment. So that's kind of where all of that is coming from.
at the moment? There's some writing happening.
There's lots of writing. Yeah, the next thing is charging up.
Can you give us an exclusive? More poetry.
Next question.
I should be your agent, Caleb.
Exactly.
Okay, it's another question. This is a great question. As a former teacher yourself, what do you think the solutions to lack of literature by people of colour in schools might be? Paget High School, for example, have asked if you think the government have a role to play.
Shout out to Paget High School. What am I saying? With this is very, very, very it's a bit techie, it's a bit sticky, because I think that the problem is wide set. The problem is in every aspect of education. The problem is in pedagogy. The problem is in the way that schools are run, the relations between senior staff and the other staff. The relations is between teachers and students as individuals, and also their personal bias, their bias in educating people. So things need to sort of be addressed on many, many, many fronts in that way. However, first and foremost, the curriculum itself needs to be revamped. And I say that with my chest. If anyone wants to take up a conversation or a little straightener, I'm ready to do it verbally, that is. Essentially, the curriculum needs to allow students to be more in charge with their education. I think that at the moment it's not pupil-led enough. I think there isn't enough space for creativity, imagination. I think we need to allow students to take more ownership in what they want to learn and how they want to learn as well. And when all of that changes, it will certainly make life easier for teachers. Teachers are unsung heroes, absolutely, because
I think we need to take a moment to honor the teachers.
Absolutely.
This time, the parents who stepped into the role of teacher during challenging times. I mean, it has really been a year where we've seen the civilian become the government on the ground, right? I feel like I've seen normal people take up the mantle, which they shouldn't have to do, but they have done. And I'm taking a moment to really honor the work that people have been doing in the face of what's been happening this year is pertinent. Can I'm just going to come from the question here. Is there a teacher you would particularly like to honor who was instrumental on your journey?
Yeah, shout out Miss. No, there's a few. I can't even say one because that would be, they would not be happy about that if they found out. Shout out Miss Hardy. Miss Hardy was my A-level English teacher. She was amazing, and she really opened up my understanding of literature, how to write well. There was a fascination and almost obsession that she had with literature, poetry specifically, that I feel like I kind of caught that bug. Mr. Hendricks as well, shout out you. Mr. Silva, Mr. Jones as well. Mr. Jones for putting up with me. I was a terror in year 9. I was just absolutely not interested in education. And Mr. Jones found a way to nurture some sort of talent or potential that he saw within me. I used to be the student in the corner of the class that just did no work. And when he would like set us a writing task, for example, he would always pick me out. And because I've been messing around and I did no work whatsoever, he would say, Caleb, all right, could you read what you've written? In fact, actually, stand up so we can hear you and the whole class can appreciate what it is that you're about to say. And I would get up and I would have my book like this so nobody can see. In reality, there was nothing there. So I would have to go off the top of my head to just like to answer what it is or to write what it is that we were supposed to write. And sometimes it would work. Like most times it would work. Until one day he said, "Let me read that personally because that was good. Bring that book here." And I brought it to him and there was nothing there. And that's how I got caught. But from that moment on, he knew that there was something in me, and he really spent time and had a lot of patience for me. So shout out Mr. Jones.
That's amazing. It's about looking deeper. It just is in that classroom. The bored person, sometimes intellectual one in the room. I've done that for myself.
Yeah.
Next question. 8 times 3 class. What does that mean? Clearly very old. Wimondham College ask, do you follow a criteria when you write poetry? And is your poetry always about yourself or your experiences?
The only criteria that I follow when writing poetry is to tell the truth, and to enjoy what I'm writing. If I don't enjoy it, I abandon it. If it doesn't feel truthful, and when I say truthful, I don't mean that it has to be verbatim exactly what it is that happened or exactly what it is I'm feeling, but there's a truth that feels like this is what I want to write. And that's the criteria that I stick by. This is what I want to write, not this is what I think someone else wants me to write or anything like that. So yeah, and no, my poetry is not always about me and my experiences. Most of the time as a poet, it usually ends up being the case, but I'm far from an interesting person for me to wholesomely just write about me.
I don't believe that's true, but at least the work is
Yeah.
Paget High School ask
Paget High School, double questioning.
If and when you doubted your abilities, what helped you to get over your doubt and continue writing?
It's a difficult one, because confidence and trying to think exactly what it is that I want to say with this, because I think that there's something about our existence, and our abilities that, especially when you're a teenager, you doubt so much. You look at places that you want to be, or places that you want to be, or places that inspire you, people that inspire you, and you think, wow, you're so talented, or wow, you've got this like, God-given ability to do this thing. But that's such a crushing feeling that I had growing up. And even now, sometimes I think, am I actually good at writing, or am I actually good at making films? Like this sense of imposter syndrome, or sense of like, not feeling worthy, is something that I've learned to fight every single day. Some days I wake up and I'm like, this is a scam, right? Like one day everyone's going to wake up and feel like I'm not, I don't know exactly what it is I'm doing. But essentially there's a small level of arrogance that you have to have within yourself. There's a high level of belief that you have to have within yourself. And that's something that you're not born with. You have to learn that every single day. You have to affirm to yourself that you are gifted, you have the ability, that you have the tools, or you will find the tools to get to what it is that you want to get to, or to achieve what it is that you want to achieve. So yeah, thank you for that question, Paget High School. who are in Staffordshire, I would say, right?
You know everyone.
I know
I,
geography very well.
I've been doing a lot of mentoring of young people through the lockdown, and doubt is something that comes up so much. And I often say to them, because this is what I have to say to myself too,
Yeah,
let doubt guide you.
absolutely.
Spend so much energy trying to push it away. And actually, if I just took a moment to sit with how uncomfortable it made me,
Yeah,
I think, as you say, you find truth on the other side. You know, doubt is sent to teach us.
yeah.
Highgate Hill, London Academy, Highgate Hill. I know where that is. We have set up a Year 9 club aimed at reading more writers of colour. We are watching together now. Hi.
Hi
What
guys.
do you think we should read by writers of colour? What are your recommendations apart from your own incredible
Apart from my own, there's a whole list of YA authors that off the top of my head, I'm like, oh, I want to sort of you know when someone asks you a question like that and then it just like disappears. But there's a
it
whole list.
dissipates in your mind.
Yeah,
I think, I mean, I think it's important. It's not that important, you know, prizes aren't why we do it, but Bernardine Evaristo, Girl, Woman, Other, first Black woman ever to receive the Booker Prize, I think is an incredible place to start. Candice Carty-Williams, Queenie, I think is
yeah, absolutely.
the biggest glowing
There's a
hit.
book called Open Water by Caleb Nelson that's coming out next year, and I think that would be so good to read.
Amazing. I mean, they are Year 9. I wonder if have we recommended stuff that's a bit.
Um, well, how about this? We'll just send a whole list to City of London Academy. Shout out you.
Shout out to all of you. Last question. Sydenham High School. 8A.
Yes, Sydenham High School.
What are your plans for the future and for supporting Black artists?
My plans for the future, right now, in the immediate future, I'm super craving Nando's. So that is something I'm looking forward to in the future. But in the future, I'm writing more books. I'm writing more poetry collections. I'm writing more novels as well, making more films. The future is bright. And what am I doing to support Black artists? I am doing anything that I can, whether it's making introductions to people who they should know or places that they should be, or whether it's championing their work to other people who like my work, or any way, shape, or form by giving advice, anything that I could do.
Amazing. Very last question to end for both of us.
Yeah.
This is a head exploder. Do you have a favorite poem?
I don't have a favorite poem. It's incredibly difficult to pick one poem to make your favorite.
It's hard, isn't it? Because it feels like poetry, like music, is just a signifier of who you are as a person. You know, the way you could browse someone's record collection and start to piece together who they are. Exactly. I think poetry is as strong in terms of signaling our identity, isn't it? I wonder what my favorite poem is. I've always loved the work of Mary Oliver, and she is not a person of color, but I think she is a female writer that I read really early on, who I just thought, oh wow, like she's like beautiful and violent. You know, she understands the cross section between beauty and violence, and a lot of women writers were just I don't know, she was the first person who spoke loudly to me, so I'm going to say Mary Oliver as a general artist. Okay, it's time for us to wrap up.
Okay.
I can only imagine the impact that your words have had on the young people and older people, teachers, anyone who's in this conversation about changing the narrative around poetry and the curriculum. You are walking the walk when it comes to encouraging the representation and the richness that we have to see making its way through our schools. I thank you for your work and your continued work and for your time today.
Thank you. It's been incredibly fun.
It has been fun. I have to say thank you to everyone for tuning in. If you have enjoyed what you've seen today, there is a blurb that I'm supposed to read, which I can't find. There it is. Here we go, Zoom Life. There are further resources in the description below, including the link to a short feedback survey. We would really, really appreciate your feedback. So do fill it in if you can. Thank you for watching. Pour is on your book stands.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes.
Caleb, Femi, thank you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you very much.